right, we are back. You know what time it is, a little 11 o'clock Eastern Saturday. It means college football is upon us. Week 11. We're here to break it all down. We've got 12 games on the sidebar. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about Prize Picks and Sleeper and everything we got going on here at Stochastic. It's an action-packed show. We're here to answer your questions. I'm Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski is along for the ride. He's with me. He's ready to rock. Sure, you were breaking down UNLV last night, breaking down SMU. Sir, what's the word? I haven't even really talked to you about the slate. How are we feeling with an hour to go?
Feeling pretty good.
Okay.
And the slate is awesome. So nothing really to feel bad about. All smiles here. Looking forward to it, man.
I love it. I want to ask a couple quick questions, and I saw your Prize Picks card already venture across my Twitter timeline. But when you look at this slate, is there major injury news we're waiting on? Is there tight pricing, soft pricing, any key themes that we want to think about when we break down these games?
I think the biggest injury stuff is in the Minnesota game, and it just comes down to their running back position because we might get a Newbin at a 4K. You'll have to wait on that. I think there's a pretty good chance. Otherwise, the slate is semi-soft. There's a couple guys near the minimum, but QBs are priced up a little bit. Running backs are a little cheaper, so I don't think you need a QB in the super flex.
There you go. So we're going to have some flexible lineup construction options. And I do want to quickly talk right off the top, because listen, if you are looking to get exposure in the college football streets, Prize Picks is just another way to do that. If you haven't been over there, certainly worth checking out. Not only are you going to get a deposit match up to $100, you're also getting one free month of Odd Shopper Premium. So we're just giving you tools on tools. So you can sign up with the link below, and you have been putting out some cards. I've been tailing them when I can, when I'm not in New York. And I want to ask you specifically, today the day where Oklahoma State's running back doesn't go bananas. Talk to me about a few player props.
I took the under on Ollie Gordon.
Yeah, you did. Let's go.
Doesn't feel good, but it's basically just a projection thing. Like, you'd need his carries to get to like 35 to reasonably project this. His efficiency's through the roof, but we just don't see that being sustainable. Like, the guy can't average 7 yards per carry. It's risky because UCF has a terrible defense, especially against the run. So I kind of tried to play the caveat game. If you're nervous about Ollie Gordon, I included one of the extra ones you could do. That was a Drake May over passing, which isn't on the official card, but just a substitute. Against Duke, who's down their best corner and best linebacker, that should be a pretty nice place to look. Then there's a bunch of receiving ones. Rashad Owens, he's just not projected enough. The guy's seeing double-digit targets, whether or not we have the injuries go his way. Luke Grimm, they're missing one of their cheap receivers, but what that does is consolidate opportunities for the Kansas starters. And he's also been a full-time player coming off a 7-target game. There's a lot of good options on Prize Picks. Those are a few of my favorites.
Again, just another way to get exposure. So link is below. You sign up, you get that money, get our tools. A win-win. Chris Carlton, appreciate that super chat. I don't know if you had a question there. We're just saying 10. I'm down with that. Let's do it. Let's have a day. Flag plants. We got you. I will let you know, particularly on the betting side, but let's get into these games. We start with a game where if I did have to bet it, I would take the points, and that's Georgia Tech and Clemson. It's hovering around 2 touchdowns. Georgia Tech is a wild team. We know they can beat good teams. We know they can lose to anybody. Talk to me about, Haynes King and this offense when we start to build out our DFS lineups today.
Weird DFS spot, tough matchup for them, but Clemson's still down some defenders. We just saw Notre Dame unable to take advantage of that. The big thing with Haynes King is they priced him way up at 8,800. So it's not a good matchup. The price is kind of prohibitive on this slate when there's a lot of cheaper QBs you can run and stud running backs. I don't really have anything negative to say about King himself. He's averaging over 7 yards per carry, 545 yards. And he's also been effective as a passer because Georgia Tech plays really fast, 258 yards per game. But it's a pricing thing. There's other alternatives I'd prefer, but if you're going contrarian with King, I have no issues with him. And they're also pretty easy to stack. Malik Rutherford and Singleton aren't expensive. It's just the question of, is that your preferred stack today? And my choice is going to be no, but he's also not going to be owned. So if that's the contrarian piece to your lineup and you jam chalk around it, can't really fault you.
Do you think that, because it seems like if he's going to get there, it's got to be with the legs once again. Do you think sacks could pile up here, or do you really expect him to have a healthy rushing total?
He should be just fine rushing.
Okay.
Even when he takes sacks, they just run him so much. He's not live to finish with like negative yards or something.
Okay. That's huge. when you look to the rest of Georgia Tech, whether that's skill position players, I would say on the outsides probably where they excel, Blaylock, Rutherford, those types, or maybe even in the backfield if you see something. Is there someone to attach with him or a one-off from Georgia Tech?
I don't think anything in the backfield, just because they run a committee, even if Cooley's out, which I'm not sure whether he will be. The absence last week might have been performance related. We just don't know. And then the receiving game, I think it's Rutherford and Singleton if you go there. Those guys have pretty good target volume. It's just the Clemson matchup is going to be dicey.
Let's talk about Clemson then. Dicey would be an understatement for Cade Klubnik. It's just not good. 7,300 on DraftKings, but I don't even know the path to getting you there. The upside's not there on the ground. Passing upside's not there. Is he a cross off or is he in play today?
I don't think he's in play. One of their B reporters tweeted this morning about the injury he's dealing with, and it's an ankle, I believe, which has limited his mobility. So I think now that we have Klubnik solely reliant on his arm, that scares me. I think it should scare you guys too. But the team total's high, so it's a spot where Klubnik probably would be in play for me if we had him at full strength because the team total's so good, but we just don't know on the health. And he already stinks, so my approach is going to be just not playing a lot of Klubnik. He's in like a handful of my 150 set, but that's it. I actively brought him down because of that injury news. And it brings his receivers down too. They're already kind of hard to predict. You have Brown, Bo Collins, Stellato, and Brenningstool's pretty cheap at tight end. But if we're expecting reduced efficiency from that passing attack, I think it's tough to play these guys.
With Shipley, it looks like he cleared protocol, and I assume, unless you think otherwise, that he would assume a really healthy workload immediately. Is that the best play on Clemson today?
I kind of don't think he does. The efficiency, well, it's not nothing he's done wrong. It's just Maffa's been better. Last week, Maffa tearing up Notre Dame. You can isolate their previous games. It was like a 70-30 split, 60-40 in certain games in favor of Shipley, but he's just been outplayed. So I don't know what the timeshare is going to look like. I think it would be wise for Clemson to give Maffa more work. But at the end of the day, we just don't know what they're going to do. I think it's a timeshare. To what degree, I don't know. So I am trying to actively bring these guys down as well. They're kind of in that tournament conversation because the matchup is awesome. Georgia Tech allows over 5 yards per carry. But yeah, man, I'm nervous about this timeshare with Maffa playing so well. I don't know how you keep him off the field, but I'm also not the Clemson coach. If you think Shipley's back to his regular role, then you should play him.
Anything else on this game?
Not really. I didn't have as much interest in this game as I thought I might, with the total coming in at 55 or higher in some spots.
Fair enough. Next game, definitely a healthy total, no doubt about it. Kansas at home taking on Texas Tech. There's got to be some plays in this game. Let's start with the Tech side. I want to ask you about whoever's going to be on the field for them, whether it's Brooks in that backfield or their pass catchers. What do you make? Because Kansas at times has given up some production.
They definitely do. Their defense has gotten better, but we've talked about this a lot. They're still not a juggernaut. You can beat them. Texas Tech is really fast and they pass a ton. Baron Morton's also a little pricey. I think the slate sets up for more of like a stars and scrubs build at quarterback. So this Morton range isn't ideal. And it's also a spot where he's probably not the preferred option in the range either. Only 12 rushing yards, so solely reliant on getting there through the air. Even if you just look at Bean on the other side, who's 300 more, you have multiple paths to a ceiling. So that's why I would say Morton is kind of behind some of the other guys in this range and behind overall construction-wise. But yeah, you mentioned Brooks. He's like impossible to fade at 7,700. 116 yards per game, 24 touches per game, active as a receiver. I mean, the guy's passed 30 touches in 3 of the last 4 games. He's like almost Ollie Gordon light in terms of his workload. So I'm definitely not fading Brooks, but I think you could run one-off receivers too, or if you're game stacking this using like a Kansas piece, you could look to a receiver as well. Jaron Bradley and Miles Price are the top 2, but they're expensive. Recently, they've been giving a ton of work to Coy Eakin, who's been above 80% of the routes in 2 straight games, just coming off an 8-target game. He's only 3,800, so a lot of you guys look for value. He's a player I would just highlight if you're down in that range, especially if you're on like the Kansas side and you're in this range. He might be the preferred guy you look to if you're game stacking.
Brooks, I assume, is in cash viable territory.
Yes, there's a lot of good backs. So I like kind of debating this if he's the guy I prefer. But yeah, he's in the conversation.
On the other side, we knew that Daniels, of course, is a very, very top end quarterback, but Bean has filled in admirably, and he's a really good player in his own right. This offense is still electric. It's got options on the outside. I always have difficulty with these wide receivers from Grimm to Fairchild, Arnold, whoever else is out there. When you look at Kansas, they are a slight favorite. What do you expect is the attack today?
They can beat you in multiple ways. I don't know what their preferred approach is going to be. I guess if you look at the matchups, Texas Tech a little weaker on the ground, but Bean does it in multiple ways, which is why I like him so much. He's averaging over 5 yards per carry, 154 yards on the ground. They started with Daniel, so don't look too much into the raw numbers. The efficiency is good. And as a passer, he's been fine too. 236 passing yards per game. That's on 25 attempts. This is a pace-up spot, so if they get coaxed into a shootout, which kind of looks likely given the 62 total, Bean is another good play. I still prefer the Stars and Scrubs build, but Bean, if you find yourself in this price range, is pretty nice option. I think he's fine if you find yourself here like a outside cash consideration, in my opinion. But they also use Devin Neal quite a bit, especially in games where they're competitive 3.5 point spread. So this projects to be exactly that. Above 20 carries in 2 of the last 3, just shy of 100 yards per game, very active as a pass catcher, 8 targets in the last 2 games. Neal is underpriced. And like we talked about with prize picks earlier, Trevor Wilson being out has consolidated routes for this team. And Kansas's prices across the board at receiver came down. Generally, like Arnold and Grimm were sort of parked at like 5.5K all season long till this week. Now Arnold's 4.5, Grimm is 39. Their tight end Fairchild's at 4K, Skinner's at 4.1. It's the first week all year I think I actively forced to stack with Bean. So I like the receivers, bet the over on Grimm's prop. The volume should be pretty good here. And the most important thing is they're not expensive anymore.
When you talk about Bean in a stack, are you thinking like QB +1, QB +2? Like, are you naked? How do you, it seems pretty indifferent.
You can run him naked. He runs a ton. I did force a stack just one. I never force doubles. A lot of times they just come if they project well.
And you're fine with that if it does?
Probably not. There's a lot of opportunity costs.
Okay.
Not with this team.
Fair enough. We had a super chat from Sam. Appreciate it. 6K or less super flex. Already have Hughes and Fafita. So if we go to super flex, you've got like, I mean, Shipley is there. I was drawn to Baker maybe from UCF at 59.
I would say Lincoln Victor.
Where is he? Oh, for Washington State?
Yeah, he's the highest projection other than Hughes under that price.
Beautiful. Anything else from Kansas?
I don't think so.
All right. Alabama. Got through a big test. Now they're in a sleepy game, but I still think talent-wise, probably too much. Talking 10, 11, 12. I haven't actually seen 10, 11, 12. Not as good of a total. What does Bama do? Is Milroe in play? How do we go about this?
Yeah, Milroe's in play, but it's tough to decipher him. I don't know if this is a game planning thing or what Alabama's doing, but the designed rushing attempts aren't always there. He's coming off a game where they were 13 designed attempts, and the guy absolutely dominated. But the 2 previous games, he only combined for 9. 3 previous combined for 10. So he had more designed attempts last week than the 3 prior games combined. It's hard to evaluate what Tommy Rees is doing out there a lot of the time because Milroe doesn't have good volume in the pass game, 22 attempts. So he is reliant on these extra carry games that he gets. And the total's not super high, 47. If you're going to pay off this 9K tag, he probably needs a rushing score or 100 yards on the ground. So he's not going to be a preferred play just because of the volatility with his projection, given the rushing has been all over the board for him this year. But if he does walk his way into one of those games, the ceiling is elite. So I think just firmly parked in the tournament category.
If you do go there in tournaments, it sounds like you're probably drawing to, you mentioned rushing upside. Does that make him a preferred option with no wide receivers?
So it's kind of weird. They've consolidated their routes as basically Bond and Burton on the field every single time, but I don't think Milroe gets his ceiling through passing. They just don't throw enough, and they're favored here by 11 points. What are the chances like Kentucky really pushes them into a shootout? Kentucky's 125th in pace, so I don't see that being very likely. I'm okay with like an Alabama receiver as a one-off, but I don't think I want to stack this team.
What does that do to McClellan?
He's awesome on FanDuel, which There's a big difference between DraftKings and FanDuel here. 6.5K, very middling price tag on DraftKings. He actually doesn't project well when you look at the alternatives in this range, but it's the exact opposite on FanDuel. So you FanDuel guys, I think he's a much, much better play over there, just price driven.
Anything else from Alabama?
No, I wish they would use Nye Black more, but it's not here nor there.
Yeah, there's in due time, your boy Tommy Race. I want to talk about the other side of this game. It seems like a tough spot. You mentioned the pace. What do you think Kentucky tries to do here? Leary seems like he would be on the outside looking in, or maybe you think there's something there with a cheaper price tag.
No, he takes sacks. I'm Xing him out. He stinks.
Well, that's unfortunate for them. Does that make Ray Davis? He's going to have the volume, but will he have the efficiency?
That's the big question. So for tournaments, I think he's fine because he's one of these expensive backs that's going to get volume as long as they don't get absolutely slaughtered. But I think there's better plays, safer plays. He's in the same range as like Ollie Gordon, Taj Brooks. We talked about them. Cash games, low risk contests, tournaments with smaller fields. He's not a consideration for me, but the bigger it gets, that's where I start having more interest in Ray Davis.
Yeah, you mentioned definitely taking a haircut on the ownership there from some of these other chalk guys. You already alluded to it. I assume there's no one on the outside for Kentucky that you're looking to play?
No, they're so hard to project. They don't have a clear one. It's basically similar to Kansas, where they all kind of have similar volume, but the QB's bad. The matchup's tough. Alabama's secondary is good, even with Key out. And the quarterback stinks. So they're not good price adjusted plays.
Michigan and Penn State, another early game, obviously a fascinating game on the field, off the field, 4.5-ish. Michigan is favored, but they are going into Happy Valley. It's not the easiest spot in the world. We're not going to try. I know you don't, and you should try to quantify the unquantifiable of what happens. Does this matter? All this stuff with the coach, of course. But JJ McCarthy, unless crazy news breaks, will be out there. I've got that on good authority. He'll have his running backs. He'll have Wilson on the outside. He hasn't seen a defense quite like this. What does that make Michigan's offense in terms of priority for DFS?
Yeah, this might just be me sounding like an idiot, but what does Harbaugh really do on the field? He doesn't call plays on either side of the ball.
It's a hot dog. Just relaxes.
I mean, I know he does stuff, but in terms of, like losing a head coach, he doesn't call plays on either side of the ball. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a head coach.
I'm a Michigan fan, but I don't think it's a big deal.
I don't think it is either. I mean, it's bigger than when they played like East Carolina in non-con, but I think people might overblow this. Anyway, for DFS, it's an awful game. 45 total. Both defenses are awesome. So just amazing real life game. Make sure this is on like your quad box or something. But for DFS, super hard to play. McCarthy's really expensive in a low total game, which is the big qualm I have with him this week. Usually they have a massive total, but they neuter their offense. So you kind of have the pendulum swinging in both directions where maybe he runs more. Maybe they actually use their skill position players and run a competent offense, but now they're facing an elite defense. So he still is not going to project that well. Still a timeshare for Corum. Corum's more expensive, laughably, than just so many good running backs on this slate. So it's nothing against Corum individually, but I'm playing Ollie Gordon. I'm playing Taj Brooks, playing Amani Bailey, Mekhi Hughes. Mekhi Hughes and Corum should probably be the same price. And then in the receiving game, this is where I have some interest in like a random one-off. Just assuming the target volume is better for Roman Wilson. Cornelius Johnson in particular is really cheap, but it's just that, a one-off here and there, nothing I'm actually going all in on or anything. And it's kind of the same thing with Penn State with even less interest because they're implied for less than 20 points. Drew Aller stinks. Keandre Lambert-Smith, their only competent receiver. And then the backfield's the exact same with this split between Singleton and Katron Allen, but they're the team that's an underdog here. So yeah, I'm not playing any Penn State. Okay with like a random Michigan one-off.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very tough stop for Penn State. There's nothing for like a Cephas or anything like that as the next guy up?
Probably not.
It's a tough stretch.
We're going to talk about a lot of receivers that are very cheap that I would rather play.
I hear you. I do. You have a feel on the game? Tough game. I did not bet it.
I didn't bet it either. I would bet Penn State if I was betting it.
Yeah, I've gone truly back and forth with what happens, and I can't even arrive at a fake conclusion. I I didn't bet Tulsa and Tulane either, but that's for different reasons. Just because Tulsa is quietly, maybe it's not so quiet. Tulsa's got issues. They are not good. They're another sizable underdog here. Are they playable in DFS? Is this a team that, despite being bad, gives us some value, or are they just bad?
They're just bad using multiple quarterbacks. Watkins, I would have more interest in on like a weekday slate or something, but he's priced in the same range as like Mekhi Hughes. I don't really see a need to get there. You're taking on a ton of risk against a better defense, like almost 4-score underdogs, but they do have Camden Benjamin really cheap at receiver. So if you're using like a Tulane piece, I'm okay using him as your run back just because volume's really good for Benjamin at an extremely cheap price tag. But other than that, not a ton of interest.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned the pay down options already, and you've got Benjamin sub 4K. Are you going to look to a sub 4K potential skill position player in cash, or is that more tournament centric?
I think you can in cash, but I don't find myself doing that.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think the build particularly leads yourself there. But I know, you've already mentioned a couple, and there'll probably be a couple more. But let's talk about the other side, because if you look at the implied totals, it doesn't take a genius to figure out most of the points in this game are coming from Tulane. How does that happen? Is it on the outside? Do they just keep it on the ground with Hughes? What do you think it looks like today?
Yeah, we have a pretty good sample of Tulane neutering their offense and blowouts. Just this conference is really bad now that they lost all their good teams, other than like Memphis, Tulane, and SMU. So Pratt only attempts 24 passes per game. He's living through efficiency. Like, holy smokes, 264 or 228 passing yards on the year per game on 24 attempts is pretty damn good. If this guy ever got pushed, he would be an electric play. So it's kind of, how do you think Tulane gets it done? I would rather play Mekhi Hughes. I would not play Pratt and Hughes together. Mekhi Hughes has 4 straight games of 20 plus carries. He's averaging 97 yards per game on the ground. He doesn't have the best passing game usage, but that's actually come up of late. So I don't think he's a stone zero in the pass game like I kind of thought he was earlier in the year. And the biggest thing with Hughes is he's 5.8K. Like, if you're running 3 running back builds, which you should be doing for cash, he rounds things out nicely. You can get to Ollie Gordon, Taj Brooks, someone else of your liking that's expensive. And McHughes is kind of the glue that puts your lineup together. So very much in cash. I would prefer using Hughes to Pratt. But if you want to go the opposite direction, you think Tulane gets it done through the air, I think that's fine too. Like, this Tulsa defense is so bad. Tulane could do it in multiple ways. They're allowing 8.9 yards per pass attempt. That's almost a first down every time the opposing quarterback drops back. But we've also seen Tulane play egregious teams, and Pratt throws like 16 times. So I'm still worried about that.
Yeah, let's go to the videotape. 8.9, that would be 128th in the country. Obviously, UMass is up to 9.3. That's
wow. Don Brown, man, you're supposed to be a defensive guy.
It's in the works. Anything else from this team?
Yeah, I guess we should talk about the receivers just because the team total is so high. I would stack Pratt if you use him. I think, like, what are the chances they let Pratt run wild on the ground? I think that's pretty low.
Yeah.
So to get his ceiling, I think you need him to throw. Lawrence Keys is a little bit expensive for my liking. I'd rather play Brazel or Jackson. And I do think Yale Keith Brown is in play at 3,400. He's a part-time player, but you're going to find yourself at about 4 to 5 targets, 50% of the routes. This would be another spot. Like, if Tulane's the game you go heavy on, this is the min-price guy I would take from this game.
We did
I guess Benjamin too. I mean, I don't know. There's two decent cheap guys.
And I want to ask you, it's not, Benjamin's very cheap, but we did have a super chat, very generous from Keith. Appreciate that. I know it's always difficult. If you were forced to the Stoneman, is there anybody down there this week?
Yeah, Dixon Veal for Purdue. He's been stepping up for Abdur Rahman Yassin. He's live down there. He actually projects well too. So you're not really reaching for a straw playing him.
Okay.
Make sure Yassin is out, but yeah.
No, that is beautiful. That is why we do this, because I don't even know who that is. There we go.
He's on Purdue. It's probably says a lot.
I mean, Purdue, once we get past the first couple, it's not good. Let's get one more game, then I'm going to talk about a couple other things we've got going on. This could be a sneaky good game. I said this over on the Odd Shopper channel. If you're looking for betting content with you, I think right now, Arizona is the third best team in the Pac-12. They're playing great football. They're on the road today, around a 10-point favorite. Talk to me about this Wildcats team who clearly has something going, Cowing on the outside. I don't know about their backfield, but Fafita, is this a team in play?
Yeah, I like this team a lot. I think they're a great team to use today. I think this is a sneaky over spot. Colorado's defense is bad, and I don't think Arizona's defense is that great either. They're still 10-point favorites. Their team total is nice. Fafita is one of these cheap guys I think that helps you with the stars and scrubs build, which is where I gravitate at quarterback. So getting him at 6K I think is nice. Doesn't run a lot, but Colorado's defense is atrocious, allowing 8 yards per pass attempt. So they're probably around, I don't know, outside the top 100, somewhere in that range. They stink. And now they're playing electric receivers in Jacob Cowing and Ted McMillan, both of whom are too cheap on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Stacks are extremely easy. Runbacks are extremely easy too on Colorado. So right away, the passing game should have a lot of interest to you. And if you do want to get to a runner, we saw Michael Wiley re-sprain his ankle last week. I don't think he plays. And with him out, they just basically gave Jonah Coleman the full backfield, 17 carries. He's by far their preferred pass catcher. Like he's pushed 60, 70% of routes in some of these games where we've seen Michael Wiley out. DJ Williams, the other back they use, is just a 2-down grinder. So at 4,300, Coleman, I think, is a very good, cheap adjusted, price adjusted running back option.
If we get word confirmation that Wiley is out, does Coleman creep into a cash build where you pay down at the third running back spot or have 4 running backs?
For sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I could see that path as well. I want to ask you, and you mentioned already, Colorado's clearly got guys on the other side that you can run it back with, but is Sanders in play for a stack with a run back of a Coleman potentially?
Probably not.
Okay.
Just takes so many sacks, man.
He really does.
He's so expensive. Like he's negative 80 rushing yards this year. He needs more than a 300-yard bonus to get you there. He needs like 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, and a 300-yard bonus because of the sacks he takes. Like I'd have to cross-reference the projections, but I'm not sure he projects more than Fafita straight up. Like he straight up might. He's a terrible price-adjusted play.
What about his pass catchers? You know, Weaver, Hunter, Horn, all these guys can have big games. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, so it's kind of counterintuitive. You're like, how could you like the receivers for this team when you don't like the quarterback? Well, part of it's pricing, but the other part is the sacks are just so meaningful. You lose like 40 yards in sacks. It's a touchdown off the board for your QB. What I like about Colorado's receivers, they're so consolidated. Weaver, Horn, and Hunter, they're the only guys playing. They use a 4th receiver a ton, occasionally a tight end, but that player rotates. None of these guys are particularly expensive. I find them to be efficient, price-adjusted plays, and they're excellent run backs if you're stacking this Arizona game. And I do think the plays will be owned, but I don't think a lot of people are going to full game stack it because the total is 54.5. Again, I like the over on that. So this is a spot I think we can look to for potential game stacks.
Yeah. And yeah, chat's just talking about that right now, about game stacks in this game. I think they're spot on it. I like this. Anything else? I know you're kind of just talking about some of this, but if you target Colorado, it's more the pass catchers than the backs.
Yeah, the backs stink X amount.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate for the backs. You think Neon Dion can pull an upset here? Life?
No,
I don't really either. Colorado will be watching the Cheez-It Bowl from the sidelines, unfortunately, but in due time.
If they make a bowl.
Yeah, that's right. If they make a bowl. All right. 6 down, 6 to go. I do want to say real quick, we talked about prize picks, and there's so many ways to get your money down in plus EV spots from betting to DFS to prize picks. And one more I have to give a shout out when they do this is Sleeper. Sleeper, if you haven't been over there, it's another app, all sorts of options. They also have a $100 first match deposit promo. We've got the link in the description of this video. In addition to all that, you know, they've got the up to 100x payouts. They have, Greg himself told me this, they've got a free square today over a half yard for Caleb Williams. They do that sometimes. They did it with Bryce Young. So when you're doing that, now you're taking a format and turning it into really, really plus EV territory. My man Mike just threw it on the screen. I mean, clearly we don't need to examine this. So they're just giving you a freebie right there in your first contest only. If you are looking to build the bankroll, these are the type of things that you can do. It doesn't mean, I say this every time, can't play the millie tomorrow in NFL. It just means that you might have a little extra money to do just that. So the link is below. You see it there. Click in, surf around, and see if it's for you. Shout out to Sleeper for doing that. Really, really cool stuff. All right. We move to the second half, and this is a real good game. I don't know if it's a great DFS game, but Florida State and Miami rivalry game, 2-touchdown spread in Tallahassee. What's the deal with Miami? What's the deal with Van Dyke? This team has been all over the map lately.
Team total is really low. It's below 21 points. So almost no interest here. None of the receivers are cheap. Cheapest is Colby Young. He'd be the guy I have the most interest in. Backfield's a four-way committee. It's like Oklahoma. Check pregame, see if enough of them are going to miss the contest because you won't know ahead of time. And then Van Dyke doesn't run enough to cover an 8K price tag. So off Miami entirely. I don't have a single Miami player.
Poor Miami. Yeah, I saw the only thing I'll say with Miami, I'm just going to take a cheap shot at their coach. Saw someone tweet yesterday that, man, if all this means is that Harbaugh can recruit and go to practice and he just can't be on the sidelines during games, that is what Miami needs desperately with Cristobal. They can just prove that he did this. But let's go to the other side with Florida State. I mean, Jordan Travis, obviously a legitimate top-end quarterback in the country, hyper efficient. You're talking about a premium tag. Is that just too much to pay for him?
I personally think he's a good GPP play, as he generally is, because the skill set's amazing. The upside is there when he's pushed. Miami projects to do that more than any of the cupcakes they've faced. I mean, since Clemson, really. I mean, they haven't played a tough game in a while. So only 190 rushing yards, 274 as a passer. That's unlimited volume. So I do like Travis. He's really expensive, which is tough because you have all the elite backs you want to play. So he's still not a cash consideration, but Florida State is fully healthy now, should be pushing this game. I love playing Travis in tournaments. And then again, Coleman and Johnny Wilson are back. Both of them are flat out too cheap. So even if you want to just use like one-offs of them, these are alpha receivers. We're talking about first round sort of draft hype on two players on Florida State that are coming off an injury. Coleman at 6.6 and Wilson, man, at 5.5K. The efficiency metrics are almost identical. Wilson averages more yards than Keon Coleman per game, so that excludes the games they've been injured. Yeah, it's a pretty good spot to look to these guys.
Would you be willing to pay 20K total for a two receiver stack with Travis?
Yeah.
Okay. What does that do to the backfield? You know, they should be playing from ahead, but Trey Benson's flat 7. Is that too much to pay?
Yes. He's in a timeshare, a bad one too.
So for Florida State, even though, again, good team, but is it really 3 players?
Yep.
Okay. No Bell?
He's playing like 50% of the snaps.
Okay. Fair enough. Don't really have a take there. Let's see. We had one question I wanted to ask. Oh, yeah. Coleman and Presley or Schrader and Grizel?
Sorry?
Coleman and Presley. I'm trying to map out who these are in my head. Coleman and Presley or Schrader and Grizel?
Yeah, use first names.
Yeah. This is, even for me, this is like trying to crack the riddles from Batman here. I can't do that on the fly. All right, let's move on because the next game is fantastic and we've got some questions on it. Oklahoma State and UCF. 6 time is a charm for me. I bet UCF. Again, I can't get Oklahoma State right. They've been killing me. They're going to lose today, though. But we still have to talk about Ollie Gordon. We still have to talk about Bowman, I guess. Talk to me about Oklahoma State.
Play Ollie Gordon and cash. Just find a way to make it work. Volume and efficiency is too good to not have him. He's going to be extremely owned too. So do you want him to be the guy that burns you because you tried to outsmart the field? In tournaments, it's a much different conversation. He's probably going to be like 50% owned. And there are other good backs. We've talked about a number of them already. Brooks, he's in this price range. There's a few others we'll talk about. And you can just flip the build if you want to play like Mackay and stuff. So that's a different conversation. But yeah, small fields, you should be playing Ollie Gordon. He's straight up the best play on the slate. He should be 10K. Like we previously in this offense, we saw Chuba Hubbard push like 10K going back a few years now. But yeah, Ollie Gordon's right in that conversation. If you are fading or just game stacking, Alan Bowman's too cheap. He's not taking as many sacks this year. Wildly, he has 4 sacks. And UCF's defensive line's not very good. So I don't really see that being a risk. Passing numbers are getting better for him. This game has tons of up and down potential. Total super high at 66.
Yep.
Pacing suits that too. Oklahoma State 46th. UCF will run with you. They're 23rd. So yeah, Bowman's firmly in play for tournaments, especially with this Gordon ownership. Very easy to stack. Presley and Rashad Owens are your top two. Leon Johnson's been the three since we saw injuries to Jaden Bray, Blaine Green, and Talon Sheetron, who we don't have any update on. So like if anybody gets squeezed, I think it's Leon Johnson. And honestly, Leon's only 200 less than Owens. Find the salary to get to Owens. He's coming off a 15 target game, and his targets have been consistent whether or not those guys play.
If we got word that Bray was in, would you look to him specifically at 46, or is that just too cute?
No, I'm playing Owens.
Okay, fair enough. And then last question, just because of the game environment where you're pushing upwards of 65, 70 points, could this be a rare spot where you could go onslaught with Bowman and Ollie Gordon included in your Oklahoma State stack, or you want them separate?
I think you can do that. I think for cash, you should play Owens and Ollie Gordon without Bowman.
Yeah. On the other side, whether you're game stacking or you just want to look to this team, we've got a UCF team that, again, they're in the bounce house. They know what they're doing. Talk to me about them. Mobile quarterback, skill position players all over the field. Baker, Hudson, Harvey. Where do they grade out at their respective price points?
Homie's awesome. I think he's in the cash consideration at quarterback, just his dual threat skill set in this up and down game environment. Oklahoma State's terrible on defense, so you should get there. I think he's in cash consideration. Harvey's awesome too. He's too cheap, below 7K. I mean, this guy's going to push for 20 touches. He's averaging 99 rush yards per game, very active in the pass game, averages another 25 yards through the air. And then they're very easy to stack. It's Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson, and then you move on. Townsend's questionable. If he plays, I would have some interest, but being 300 cheaper than Kobe Hudson, I'd rather just find my way up.
And you're fine in tournaments just running Plumlee alone if you want?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is a real good game environment. Obviously, it seems like a lot of plays on both sides. We had a couple questions in chat. We had DraftKings tournament. Cody Schrader and Jaden Ott, or Taj Brooks and Lincoln Victor?
Tournaments, I prefer the Ott side.
Yeah, so do I. Schrader and Ott. Quick question. Wide receiver on DK, 5,000 or left, already have Bowman and Owens.
I don't know. I'm not gonna pull it up.
Let me see what we got going on.
5,000 or less receiver on DK already has Bowman and Owens.
You got your boy Leon Johnson.
Yeah, he's news dependent and he's in that same environment.
Luke Arnold or Lawrence.
I would
Arnold.
say Tron Grizel probably is my favorite.
Grizel. Yeah, we'll get to that Cal game in a little bit. Plumlee or Bean?
Plumlee.
Yeah, I need both those teams to win in the betting market, though. I'll tell you what, get it done.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. FIFA versus Mendoza, Fafita versus Mendoza, Cal quarterback
Fafita.
or Arizona. Anything else from this game though? This is one of the better on the slate. Clearly options on both sides. We know Gordon and cash. Have we hit everything we need to?
Yeah.
Okay. Utah and Washington. You know, north of a touchdown. I'm not a believer in this Utah team. What's left for them? Their offensive line has gotten a lot of issues. What can they do against Washington today?
Lose. This team's horrible.
Good. I got Washington in teaser. I got Washington in all sorts of exposure today. I need them to get it done.
Yeah, me too. I bet him like 3 times.
Yeah.
Barnes is terrible. Don't play him. The backfield's news dependent. If Jaquindon Jackson plays, he's an outside consideration in tournaments. If he's out, I don't know what they're going to do. Some games they use the safety, Sion Vaki. Sometimes they use Nate Glover. They brought Nate Johnson in for some Wildcat last week. They started using DeJohn Stanley and Charlie Vincent. I think if Jaquindon Jackson's out, you X out Utah entirely.
Do you think that Utah has to push to get Penix to his ceiling today, to get Dylan Johnson to his ceiling today? Or are you playing Washington players and you don't care what Utah gives you?
I don't know, man. Like, the Washington players are priced like this game is a 70 total.
Yeah,
but it's 50.
not.
So they project horribly, all of them. If you think Washington just slaughters Utah, you can play Washington guys. If you think Washington goes up and down with, if you think Utah goes up and down with Washington, then you can play Washington guys. I don't think that's likely. I mean, their implied team total is not even 30 points. So you're really making some risky bets here with the Washington guys. With that said, they're so talented. Penix, I'm just not going to play because he takes sacks on top of this game environment being awful. Definitely not playing more than one Washington guy in a lineup. Whether it's O'Dunes, Polk, Bernard, Dylan Johnson, I don't really have a preference between them. They're all so good. Any of them could go off at any particular time. And Bernard's really cheap. So he kind of gives you a different construction. But yeah, it's a very hard team to play this week.
Sounds like a game, though, if you get exposure, it's more of a one-off than a stack.
I think so. Unless if you play Penix, I would stack him, but
yeah. But you're not doing that particularly like in cash, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that seems it's true. Look at the total, man. I mean, we know there's range of outcomes, but this is not a Washington, Oregon back and forth type environment projected wise. Jordan Newman -6 anytime TD or Jonah Coleman -135. I'm fine with Coleman, particularly at that price. Can you completely onslaught Arizona with a QB, running back, and 2 wide receivers? Interesting. So can you put Coleman in there with Fafita?
I probably wouldn't. The total's not high enough. But I mean, if you think they go way over the total, you can.
If you do that, my recommendation would be to definitely have a Colorado run back. I think you need Colorado to have production in that scenario. But
agreed.
That's just 3 down or 3 down. That would be bad. 9 down, 3 to go. Great game here. Tennessee and Missouri. Our boys are not getting a lot of respect. It's the spread has bounced up. It took 3, and then there was some resistance. It's bounced around. Talk to me about this game. We know Tennessee's very comfortable playing crazy fast at times. You're not the biggest Joe Milton fan. He rarely makes it into the lineups, into the conversation. Is that once again the theme today?
I think so. He's a little expensive for my liking at 7,800. He runs a little bit, 265 yards, but their volume's not good in the pass game, only 223 yards there. So I'd rather play Plumlee. There's just alternatives I like more in that range, and one of them's on the other side in Brady Cook, who's a more dynamic player overall. And you see this inefficiency in the pass game trickle down to the receivers. They lost their number 1 this year, so I guess some of it's probably not Joe Milton's fault, but Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, and Dante Thornton have not done their part. And this Tennessee team's played just like an incredibly easy schedule for an SEC East team. Of course, they have had their battles. You can't play in that conference and not have some, but yeah, they've been living good, and Missouri's been the opposite, playing close games and covering spreads against the best of the best. I love Missouri against the spread, and I have a lot more interest in them for DFS too, just being the more exciting offense. Part of the reason too, Tennessee runs this 3-headed backfield committee that's not very interesting. I don't know, for a team that plays so fast and is favored here, I surprisingly don't have a lot of interest.
I want to ask you then about the other side. And one of the main questions has been, what is the status of the alpha for Missouri and Burden? What's the latest, and do you expect him to play?
Yeah, he's fine.
Okay. So you're just evaluating him straight up then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why people said he was questionable. Missouri's been doing this for weeks and he's played through it. They take like the Patriots approach where a guy like stubs his toe, he's questionable. He left the game, but he didn't even see trainers. He came right back in. I mean, like, watch the game and you'll know, or listen to Betting You and you'll know.
Yeah, there's the actual answer. Always available on that Odd Shop for channel. But talk to me about, I mean, if you go to Cook, is Burden the natural piece, or is it Weiss or something else?
They're all fine, but Burden's so cheap. Like, I would just probably get to the alpha for this team. The guy is an absolute wagon, and he's way too cheap. I mean, 6.9K, he should be up there with O'Dunes. He's averaging 106 yards per game on 10 targets. Just absurd volume. I still don't buy Tennessee's defense because of the opponents they've faced mostly. So they look great on paper, but I don't really buy this defense at all. So yeah, I'm going to be playing Luther Burden and Brady Cook stacks. Brady Cook's awesome. Good dual threat ability for him. He'll use it more in games he has to. Hyper efficient through the air, just unbelievable. And I guess the last thing on Missouri is they kick Nathaniel Pete to the curb. Every single carry now is basically going to Cody Schrader. The guy's playing like 95% of snaps. So obviously when you do that, you have good route rate too. He's an awesome GPP play in this range.
Yeah, you mentioned the touches. It seems like no game script is going to prevent him from having 20 plus in any situation. I guess my question is he another back that is in that conversation for the 3 or 4 that you want in cash?
Yeah, I think he's in the conversation, but he's outside. There's so many good plays. He would be I'm preferring Ollie Gordon, Mackay for Tulane. So if you
Brooks.
like land on it, yeah, I think Brooks is ahead of him. But it's kind of like if you have the two you really like and then you fall in that price range, I would be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really not that much in his actual price range. It's, plus or minus a
Couple
thousand.
hundred, yeah.
Yeah. Like Coleman's in a different spot. Obviously, someone like Neal's in a different spot. McClellan on DraftKings. You mentioned the price discrepancy. Anything else for this game? I mean, you talked about Burden and Weiss. Does it go beyond that on the outside?
Mookie Cooper plays a ton, so he's in play. And the last thing I guess I'll say is I don't know if this is a trend or a 1 week blip because they were trailing against Georgia. They kind of just decided they weren't going to use the tight end last week. And Mekhi Miller had a 70% route rate, only 2 targets, but he's 3,100. If you like this game, I mean, he's not the worst play.
Attachment to Cook if you did it?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, we got 2 games left also, and my man Mike already dropped this in chat. I always like to let people know if you are looking to get all this information for yourself, if you want to see the projections, the ownership, and it's not just for college football. We have combined our college packages. It's available for college basketball before the season really heats up. We're doing Tuesday and Saturday, but all that information is there. College, 50% off your first month or week. The link is below, and type in college 2023. You'll see the information there. It's a great way to gear up the next couple of weeks of college football. You get a little college basketball in there. It can't hurt. We always want people to be part of the Stokastic community in any way, whether it's one of our packages, our data, our sims for other sports, or just hanging out and watching the show. It's all appreciated. Hitting the like button at the very least. That is also very acceptable and appreciated. Not sure Minnesota and Purdue appreciate hitting the like button. They shouldn't even be on the slate. Should have just went with 11 games. These teams are just terrible. Talk to me. You mentioned at the top, we have some injury news on Minnesota that we do have to monitor.
Yeah, and this actually came through on the show that the best running back on the team, Darius Taylor, is doubtful, which was a surprise to me. Not that he was doubtful, but that we got the news. This is usually like a steel trap injury-wise. But I think that sets up Newbin. They're going to use multiple backs. Sean Tyler's there. You've had Evans, but I don't really know if they use those guys after Newbin's played so well. You know what I mean? Like this guy had 40 carries 2 games ago, and he looks fine doing it. So maybe there's a little bit of risk of a committee here, but I think he leads it, even if these guys are healthy. So he had 4K. I mean, he's fine. You can use him. You can use him and Coleman in the same lineup. You can use him as a pivot off Coleman. I don't really have any problems with Newbin. Usually Minnesota, I don't have a ton of interest in their guys because they play in these just stupid Big Ten West slow games. But Purdue's defense is so bad that it's driven the total to 47.5. Like this is the best time to target a Minnesota player all year. So Newbin, I think, is pretty good. Yeah.
It's disturbing. It's true. You have to put this in context. You see the total and you're like, the total's usually 34. Like Iowa, Michigan State, those games, disgusting.
Iowa's at 27.5 today.
That's too low. Yeah, I'm all about betting the under on the, but like, come on now. That's just stupid. Thank God they're not on the slate. Is there anything else from Minnesota that we should talk about?
I don't think you can play Kaliak-Manis. I don't want to play a receiver. Just, I think too many alternatives to really feel good about those guys. I truly think it's just Newbin or pass.
Yeah, I really thought that Sean Tyler would have that backfield. That did not happen this year. That's neither here nor there, though. Let's talk about Purdue. You mentioned, one guy already potentially at the flat stone min if Yassine doesn't play. What else is there? Is Burks in play at flat 5? How do you think this team tries to attack?
I don't know if they succeed doing anything. Minnesota has a better defense than I thought. Card doesn't run enough to play him at 5K, and like he's close enough to Fafita and Mendoza where I'd rather just play those guys. Backfield's a 50-50 committee. Deion Burks will see a lot of targets, but is the efficiency good enough at 5K? I mean, he's close enough to like Rashad Owens where it's not even a conversation for me. And then I think the only real guy to look at is Jaden Dixon-Veal at the Stone Min. 11 targets combined last 2 games, like 90% route rates. It's really good. But he still is dependent on Yassine not playing, which we don't know. I don't think Yassine plays. He hasn't played in 3 games, but worth monitoring. There's enough low price guys where you can make a swap. So I don't really care if you put him in your lineup. It's pretty easy to get off him, but at least worth mentioning that late news component.
One other small piece of news I just want to ask you real quick here. It looks like for Kansas, for their wide receivers, that Trevor Wilson could be in ready to go. Does that matter to you?
A little bit. I still think the Kansas guys are cheap enough, but he's going to play like 15 to 20% of the routes. So it's not like it's nothing, but I still think he's okay.
Okay. Fair enough. Anything else from this game, or can we get to the last game?
We can go to the last one.
All right. This is a good game. Washington State and Cal. Bet Cal, like Cal. But let's start with Washington State. Cam Ward and this offense, they can score at times. We've seen it this year. What's left for them, and how playable is Ward and Victor and these guys?
Awesome game to target. Ward is too cheap. You can definitely play him. By far the best matchup I think they'll have the rest of the way. Cal's defense is terrible. They have the same yards per pass attempt allowed as Tulsa, so that should tell you how bad they are through the air. This is an air raid offense. Ward is too cheap. He's running more than he ever has to in his career. I don't think by design he's running for his life, basically. The backfield's impossible to target, but combining Ward with a pass catcher, I think, is ideal. Lincoln Victor, I think, even with some of these cheap Oklahoma State guys on the slate, I think Lincoln Victor is still the best price-adjusted play. Target counts of 19, 11, and 14 over the last 3 games. If you don't go to him, Kyle Williams is right there. Josh Kelly for tournaments, but Victor's an elite play.
Is Victor in cash?
Yes.
Okay. Beautiful. On the other side, and then we'll take a couple questions here. Cal, they've been beat down in a couple games, but against really, really top-end opponents. I don't read a lot into that. Mendoza, Ott, who else do we need to think about for this team? Because Washington State, you told me, I'm betting you, their defense is in shambles.
Yeah, I won't get into the specifics to save time, but they've got about 6 guys hurt. He hasn't played much, but he's a 4-star freshman, really good talent. He runs a little bit, so you're not really live to get a lot of sacks. The underlying efficiency is good, so you can look at like yards per game. That's not going to really make him pop because he's played in some games, limited fashion. He got hurt in a game too, but Cal is 10th in pace. They have a league average pass rate. Mendoza is going to pop in projections because of that. He's really easy to stack. Tron Grizel and Jeremiah Hunter, full-time players, elite target shares. And then Jaden Ott, he's really, I think, a much better play than normal because Isaiah Ifans got hurt. And then we just saw Javian Thomas get hurt and carted off in their last game. They're like looking at walk-ons as backups. Ott could see like a vintage 29 carry game where we've seen last year mainly was when he did that.
That would be great because I really hope that's the game script we get. Is he another one though? Good, solid target, but maybe not like in the Schrader bucket of on the outside looking in for cash?
Yeah.
Okay. Couple questions. Cowing for Arizona or RJ Harvey for UCF?
Cowing.
McMillan for Washington, Lincoln Victor, or Luther Burden and Rashad Owens?
I'm pretty sure McMillan's out.
Okay. It would be the later two for me anyway. Just I like Burden and Rashad Owens today. Do I need a bring back if I stack QB, RB, and wide receiver? Not necessarily, but that's just kind of a weird stack in general. You need a lot of points for your team. I'll say that much.
Yeah, you summed it up well.
Hughes for Tulane or Fafita in a super flex?
Fafita.
Cowing or Burden for cash?
Or?
Yeah,
Burden.
first Burden. Okay. Super chat from Pierre. Appreciate this. With wide receiver injuries on both teams, Luke Grimm or Savion Williams on FanDuel, or is Isaiah Bond in play with Burton dealing with an illness?
Bond is in play. He's a much better play. I reran some stuff like him there. Did we do our flag plants? We were supposed to do that for Chris.
Yeah, fire it away, my friend.
My cheap one would be Jonah Coleman. I don't know how contrarian we're supposed to get, but Jonah Coleman at running back and Luther Burden are the 2 players that I feel strongly a little bit more than projection.
Let me just okay, I'm sorry. McMillan for Arizona, not McMillan for Washington.
Oh, Ted McMillan. Jeez,
yes.
That's why first names help me so much.
Yeah,
right,
that's same.
Okay, so is McMillan versus who?
Let me McMillan for Arizona or Victor for cash.
I'm a moron. Sorry,
no, that was my fault. There's too many players, and they don't have cool names. That's why
Ted McMillan does.
Yeah,
So yeah, it would still be Victor, but it's
okay.
closer.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's very, very, very shady business. Last thing here before we bounce on out, can you give the elevator pitch for anything on FanDuel that we need to know?
Yeah, son. Jaden Daniels still projects really well over on FanDuel, even at the exorbitant price tag. There's just a lot of running backs that are too cheap over there, like McClellan, Amani Bailey, or just a couple to name a few. I think you should be looking at Neighbors. Xavier Worthy is extremely cheap on that site as well. Those are a couple players there I'm trying to get a lot of exposure to. Sadly, my like crunches and exposures got deleted when my computer wouldn't respond for a little bit, so I forget how much I'm playing. But yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we had a question about how do you narrow down cash plays in a large slate? I think it's like any sport, you're really looking for floor, security, opportunity. You know, some guys, you know, they might get 5 targets and they have a chance to have 150 yards or 0. What you want in cash more is this guy's going to be peppered with targets, peppered with carries, and I'll just live with the result just because I know the floor is pretty secure. That's how I would go about it personally.
Yeah, I'm not much different than you. I start with the projections, who projects well, and then look for that security in there.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where ownership becomes much, of course, less important than, you know, tournaments. You're talking about leverage pivots. You're willing to take a slightly less optimal play just because you need to beat thousands of people potentially. I think we're in pretty damn good shape. I always like to say, if we didn't get to something, at Matt_Gajewski, at JazzRazDFS, we're on Twitter. We're happy to help. Just send us a tweet or whatever the equivalent of a tweet is on X. I don't know what they call that. I'm not up on the verbiage these days. No, McMillan for Washington, my friends. Arizona's McMillan is good to go. Just so everybody knows that.
Sorry, that was me being dumb.
No, that was me. That was 100% my fault. It's actually all their fault for just having too many wide receivers with the same names in the same conferences. We need more exotic names for some of these teams. What can I say? Any final thoughts before we bounce on out of here?
Enjoy the slate, guys. Night slate's not up yet, but it's basically done. I just didn't upload it. Late night will be there as well. FanDuel's all ready through the day. And I'm trying my very best to do hoops every single day. That's also live today. My boys UW Milwaukee are on the slate. But otherwise, thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
UW Milwaukee on the slate. Look at that. Again, hardest working man in the business right here. All those links are for you guys in the description of this video, from sleeper to prize picks to our own projections and everything with the college 2023. Last thing for me, obviously, happy Veterans Day to everyone, including our producer, my man, Mike. Appreciate everybody. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the games. Let's cash some tickets. We'll do it again next week. Same time, same place.